Welcome everyone to this overview of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jayamudirayed Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Panghum Langhayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcoming everyone once again to this 15th chapter, which is called the Purushottam Yoga. It is another very short and sweet chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. 15th chapter, Purushottam Yoga. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to detach oneself from the entanglement of the material world and to understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who understands Krishna's supreme identity surrenders unto him and engages in his devotional service. This is the two-line summary of chapter 15, Purushottam Yoga. See, at the end of chapter 14, Krishna described that one who transcends the modes, he is doing so through devotional service. But in order to attain devotion to Krishna, we need to become detached from the material world, right? So, 15th chapter, Krishna is beginning by explaining why we need to be detached. And he is comparing this material world to an ashwatha. Ashwatha means a banyan tree. And then Krishna goes on to describe Purushottama Yoga from shloka 6 to 20th of this chapter. So in the first 5 verses, Krishna speaks about becoming detached from the material world, and then up to the 11th verse, Krishna speaks about transmigration of the body, transmigration of the soul through different bodies. And then from 12th to the 15th shloka, Krishna's position as our maintainer, that is made clear. And then in the next 3 shloka, it's called the 3 shloka Gita of knowledge, 3 shloki. Those 3 verses are actually a summary of the Veda and the Vedanta. And then 19th and 20th chapter, 20th verse of the chapter, how knowing Krishna means knowing everything. Actually, the sum and substance of everything is that if you know Krishna, you know everything. And that understanding will be reinforced in this chapter. So, the chapter begins with Krishna saying, Urdhvamulam athashakham ashwatham prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavit. That is, Krishna says, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Yastam Veda sa Vedavit. Vedavit means one who knows Veda. Okay? So Krishna says there is a banyan tree. A banyan tree of the material world, which is in an upside down position. Roots up, branches down. Why? Because actually material world is only a reflection of the reality of the spiritual world. Material world reflects the reality of the spiritual world. Just like, when will you see a tree turned upside down? If there is a tree near a body of water, may it be a river, or better if it is a lake where there is no flowing of water, if the still water is there in a lake, and if you find a tree on the bank of the lake, and then you can see the reflection of the tree in the lake, so what would you see? You would see the tree upside down, right? And you understand that it is only a reflection. So just like the reflection is resting upon water, this upside down banyan tree of the material world is resting upon the desire of the Jivatma. You see? So, suffice to say that the material existence actually is resting upon our material desire. Cut off the material desire, you will cut off the material existence. You see? How wonderfully Krishna is explaining, you know. And why is this called the banyan tree? Because banyan tree is such a huge, we are talking about the Ashwatha, you know, that is, you will find that from the branches there are roots that are falling into the ground, and you know, if you look at that huge banyan tree, you actually will not be able to make up which is the trunk, which is the root, which is the branch, and you know, it's so huge and complicated, generally a banyan tree. And so the material world, the entanglement also in the material world is like in this banyan tree. So when we are engaged in kamya karmas, there is no end to this banyan tree. You see, we just keep going from one branch to the other branch to the other branch, you know, and as long as we keep rotating between the branches of this banyan tree of the material existence, there is no hope for liberation whatsoever. Now, unless we understand how this tree is structured, where is the root, where is the branch, where is the root that is falling from the branch, which is the trunk, and how this whole thing is situated, without understanding that, you will not know how to, if you are stuck inside this tree, without actually studying this entire structure, how things are, where things are, how they are laid out, we will not be able to get out. Same way, if we don't understand how the material nature is working and how it is that our material existence is getting prolonged, unless we understand these things properly, we cannot get out. So, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activity and attachment to transcendental activity. You see? So, that is what is getting discussed right from the beginning of this chapter. And Krishna goes on to say, the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of the human society. So, now Krishna is taking that simile further, you know, how actually this tree is being nourished by the three modes of material nature. The three gunas are nourishing the tree of material world, and the twigs are the objects of the senses, and the roots are actually getting stronger and stronger as we keep engaging ourselves in more and more kamya karma or fruitive activity. The more we work for fruits and more we get attached, that means the tree of material existence will become more strongly rooted. You see, we always keep talking about being rooted, but this is one place where we need not be rooted. We should not be rooted. Okay? Because what is nourishing, what is strengthening the root is actually our kamya karma. Activities that we do expecting fruits and then enjoying those fruits and doing further activities to enjoy more fruits. So, Krishna continues the allegory. He says, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, and where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. So, these two verses take the allegory further by saying that this is so complicated you don't know where it begins and where it ends. Where is the root, where is the branch, how this thing is going on, you will not understand. But the sword is what? The sword is detachment. And how that detachment, that sword you will get by knowledge. So, it is said that intelligent men, Shastra says, intelligent men will cut the knots of material attachment with the sword of knowledge. You see? Knowledge brings detachment. So, knowledge with detachment act as our weapon to cut off the material existence, the strongly rooted tree of material existence. And then what happens? Then one must seek that place. It's not enough simply by cutting material attachment. Not enough by becoming free from this material world. You should also know where we are going and what we are going to do there. You see? So it is simply, we shouldn't think that we want to get out of the prison. Because without any idea, if you get out of the prison, you will not know what to do next. Most probably, you will repeat your crime and get back into the prison. Okay. So there should be clear idea that if I am getting out of the prison, I have a better place to go. And there I will engage myself in such things that I will never come back to the prison. Right? This is what is called intelligence. So not only getting out is our intention, also getting out, reaching the destination and doing things properly over there so that we don't come back to the prison. Okay. So this tree is Savirudha Moolam, means that very, very strong. The roots are Savirudha Moolam, very, very strongly rooted. So you cannot pull it down, you cannot just, it's not like some small weed in your garden that you will just pull out from the root and throw it away. No, it has to be cut off completely. You cut off little, what will happen is that you cut little from this side, it will grow from that side. So we don't want that. We have to cut it in such a way that it is completely finished. And then Krishna goes on to describe that process of surrender and the quality of those who surrender and thereby attain the spiritual world. So in the 5th shloka, Krishna says, Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama dvandver vimukta sugadukka samjne gacchantya mutha padam avyayam tat. Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha. So those who are free from false prestige, illusion and false association, sanga dosha. Those who understand the eternal, adhyatma, nitya, vinivritta kama, they are done with material lust. And dvandvayar vimukta, they are freed from the dualities of sukha and dukkha. And so unbewildered, they are moving gacchantya mutham padham avyayam tat. So they are moving towards that supremely eternal kingdom and surrendering unto the Supreme Person. You see? So the basic thing is that we should not be deluded by pride. What pride? Pride that I am the controller. By actually cultivating knowledge, we must understand that I am not the Lord of this. And Krishna is the Lord of everything. And then when one has understanding of things as they are, then such a person can become free. Free from all these dual conceptions, happiness, distress, pleasure, pain, all these things. Thus, we can become full in knowledge, and then it is possible for us to surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now, Krishna answers two questions. What is the nature of the place that a detached and surrendered soul will attain? And if one is going there, will he come back? Two very important questions. So in verse 6, Krishna says, Na tad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. Krishna says, that supreme abode of mine is not illuminated by sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach there will never return to this material world. You see? So, natad bhasayate suryo na shashanka na pavaka. It is not illuminated. The supreme abode, Vaikuntha, Goloka, is not illuminated by sun, moon and pavaka, anala, agni. No. That entire realm is self-effulgent. How? From the Sharira Kanti of the Supreme Personality of God. And that dham is made of all Chintamani stones. And those stones actually reflect the bodily luster of the Supreme Lord. That way that place is full of light. That abode is lit by Krishna. Krishna's bodily effulgence. So that is why he says, Natad bhasayate. So there you don't need a sun to rise and then the moon to rise or light of fire. No. It is already lit. And Krishna says, Yadgatva nanivartante tadhama paramam mama. That paramadhama, that ultimate supreme dham of mine, mama, yadgatva nanivartante. Once you go, you don't come back. So, actually, we should all be trying to get this one-way ticket back to Vaikuntha, back to Goloka. This should be our aim. And then Acharyas are saying that we should become captivated by this information that there is this one-way ticket. If I go, eternal happiness. That's it, Only when we become captivated by this information, we will work towards getting out of this situation, what we are currently in. Otherwise, what happens is that I am already enamored with all the sense enjoyment. So why should I, Anyway, you are saying there is no sun, there is no moon there. I like this place with the sun and the moon. No. The Paramdhama is unimaginably beautiful, and there you will have unimaginably enlightening Ananda. The bliss that comes out of knowledge, the bliss that comes out of eternality. You see, that is something different from what we think is bliss in this world. And then Krishna goes on to say, Mamaivamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashthan indriyani prakritisthani karshati. Mamaivamsho jiva loke. Mama eva amsha. Who? The jiva loke. All these jiva bhutas, all these living entities. Krishna says, Mama eva amsha. They are all my amshas, fragmental parts. And they are sanatana, jiva bhuta sanatana. They are eternal. But what has happened to them? Manashashthan indriyani prakritisthani karshati. But due to conditioned life, they are all struggling with the 6 senses. Manashashthan indriyani. The 5 indriyas plus the mind. Totally 6, they are all struggling. Why? Because we are materially conditioned. So, because of material conditioning, we are struggling. If we give up material conditioning, we will become happy. And then Krishna goes on to hint at mind's power to determine our future. Okay? In that, Krishna explains in the next verse, the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus it takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. This is a very clear indication of how the soul is transmigrating from body 1 to body 2 to body 3 to body 4 to body 5 to body infinity. Just like air carries aromas, the living entity carries different conceptions of life from this body to the next. So, whatever proclivities we have in this janma, in this lifetime, we must understand we are already carrying the vasanas from so many purva janmas. From so many purva janmas, we are carrying so many proclivities. That is why we are thinking, why am I having all these things? And why am I not able to give up? Simply by practicing spirituality 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, we are thinking, why am I not able to give up this proclivity so easily? Because not 5, 10, 15, 100, 1,000, millions of janmas, we are carrying these conceptions of life. And Krishna uses an allegory here as air carries aromas. Very, very important. When wind is blowing through a rose garden, the wind will be having the fragrance of rose, right? Same wind, when it passes through a sewage plant, it will have foul smell. But is the wind, the air that is actually the wind, does it have anything to do with either the sugandha of the rose or the durgandha of the sewage plant? Neither. Same way, although I am sitting inside this body and showing all these proclivities, it is simply because of my bodily conditioning and all my purva janma conditionings that I am showing all these proclivities. When I actually understand that, like the air, I am only carrying these things. They are not touching me in any way. You see? This is knowledge. And then the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and a sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense object. You see? So, according to our mind's desires, we will get different senses in our bodies working in different ways. For example, a dog can smell much better than you and me, right? And you have a proclivity to fly. So we buy these, or we go to these places where there are hang gliders. You will hang on them like this and then they will let you down and all that stuff. Why? Simply the mind is desiring constantly, next janma you become a bird and you can fly. Or why, put all those tanks and go diving under the sea. Put your mind to it, next janma become a fish and stay all the time underwater. Who is stopping you? And for all those models and men who like to expose 6-pack bodies and 8-pack bodies and whatnot. Next janma you become a tree. You can stand, showing your body to all and sundry for hundreds of thousands of years. So, the kind of desires that is there in the mind has a great role to play in what body we are going to get next. So, beware. Having gotten a human body, if we behave like a pig, we will become a pig in the next janma. Behave like a dog, we will become a dog. Work like a donkey, we will become a donkey for sure. So, these are all I am not saying, Krishna is saying. Okay? And then Krishna will now answer why we are not able to see this happening. Krishna says, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. This knowledge Krishna discusses in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Dehino asmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tatha deha antara praptihi. This change of bodies, we are actually going through it. Each and every one of us is actually going through this change of bodies. We have seen in this lifetime, each and every one of us, we have seen how our individual bodies have changed. Right? Even the modern scientists will say that every 7 years or 8 years, I don't know, all the cells in your body keep changing. So actually, you are having a brand new body here. So we have had a baby body, and then we have had a young child body, and then an adolescent body, then an adult body, and now, moving into old age body, all different types of bodies. So ultimately what will happen in this body when it becomes useless? We move on to the next body, that's it. You see? So dhirastatra namuyati. So you have that knowledge. When we have that training, we can see this. Otherwise, we mutha. And what is the cure for this muthatvam? How do we cure ourselves from being these muthas? Krishna says, jnana. Those whose eyes are trained in knowledge. By hearing and learning Shastra, we will become Pashyanti. We need to learn to see through the eyes of Shastra, called Shastra Chakshus. Chakshu means eye. So, we need to learn, we need to be able to see these things through the eyes of the Shastra. That's called Shastra Chakshu. So when we develop Shastra Chakshu, we will be able to understand these things. This is what is actually going on with me. You see? And then Krishna continues. When you don't have any Shastric learning, what happens? The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. You see? When we don't have the understanding and without getting the right exposure, we may try something, but we will not understand. That is, as I said, how to see through the eye of Shastra is also, you have to understand, you have to learn it from a guru. It's very, very important to learn Shastra through a guru. Because even for the smallest thing in the material world, you need somebody to teach you. Right? You need somebody to teach you, otherwise you will not know. There is a very interesting incident with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Bombay, when he made so many disciples abroad and then he came back, he wanted to establish centers in Vrindavan, Mumbai, and then Mayapur. So Prabhupada, when he was staying in Bombay, in the evenings he used to give darshan on the rooftop. The old building in Juhu, actually, not the present Juhu building. So there on the terrace, Prabhupada used to give darshan, and in the evening so many people used to come to meet Prabhupada. Or big businessmen, very pious people, Marwadis like that. And whenever they come to see a sannyasi, so they will bring huge tray of dry fruits. In Bombay you will get all these things packed very nicely, in a very decorative thali and everything. So they would come and offer to Prabhupada, and normally whenever anybody brings anything, Prabhupada would immediately ask his disciples who are there, take it, do Naivedya and bring it and distribute it among the guests and among all the other devotees. So this used to be the normal practice. So there was this new bhakta who had come from America. Okay? We are talking about the 70s. And this new bhakta was from, very new, quite young also. So one gentleman brought a whole tray of mangoes. And Prabhupada told him, okay, you take these mangoes, cut them, offer them and bring them and distribute them. Okay. So this disciple holding this tray of mangoes is looking at the mango and looking at Prabhupada and looking at the mango, looking at the Prabhupada. So he was very innocent, you see. So Prabhupada understood that he has never cut a mango before in his life. So Prabhupada said, you don't know how to cut mango? He said, yes, Prabhupada, I don't know. So immediately Prabhupada caught on that point, and Prabhupada said to all the assembled guests, he said, see, even to cut a mango you need a guru. Meaning somebody should teach you, because you cannot cut a mango right through the middle. Right? So you have to see somebody cutting a mango, then only you will know. You have jackfruit. Only if you see somebody how they are peeling and unraveling the jackfruit, only by seeing and learning from that you will be able to do it. Otherwise you will make a complete mess of it. So even for these very small things, when we need guidance, just imagine to learn Shastra, to be able to see through the eye of Shastra. So even though you may try, you will not be able to see, is what Krishna is saying. And then Krishna says, the splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. You see? So now Krishna is also explaining how these entire planetary systems are existing. What do you think is this whole interplanetary system where, every planet is moving in an orbit at a particular speed and they never hit each other? There is never any traffic jam up in the space. How is all these things happening? And how are they all floating in the space? So Krishna is answering that here. He says, I enter into each planet and by my energy they stay in the orbit. I become the moon, and the moon is the one that actually gives the taste to each vegetable. Soma. He is the one who is giving taste, flavor to the vegetables. That is why you have so many different flavors in different vegetables, although everything grows on the same soil. You see, in everything you can see Krishna's presence. This is Krishna consciousness basically. So, Krishna is the one actually maintaining us by providing even the most basic necessity. This is one understanding we must take home when we are reading chapter 15. And then Krishna says, I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuff. So as you know, there is a fire of digestion in each one of us. Jadaragni it is called. And whenever the Jadaragni becomes slow, our digestion suffers. And as the body grows old, the Jadaragni will start becoming weaker and weaker. And Krishna says, I am that Jadaragni. And I join with the air of life, Pranavayu. 5 types of Vayu is there in this body. That is what is actually playing the entire game inside our body. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. So these 5 Vayus put together, any imbalance that will cause Pitta, Kapha, Vayu problem. This is what Ayurveda is based on basically. So Krishna says, I am the Pranavayu, both outgoing and incoming. And he says, along with this, I am the one who is digesting the 4 kinds of food stuff. So Whatever is there, whatever we eat also is given by Krishna. The ability to digest that is also given by Krishna. So you see, and he is also saying, I am in the pranavayu, outgoing and incoming. So even to take a breath, we need Krishna. This is our actual condition. And then we are going on saying, I am independent, I am doing this, I am doing that. Hare, we cannot even take one breath by our own strength. One breath we cannot take by our own strength. You see? Everyone's ayu is counted by the number of breaths, and one extra breath we will not get. One extra breath we will not get. To that extent we are controlled. But we think I am Ishvara, I am controlling, I am this, I am that, I am this big, all these things. But actually we are simply big air only, hot air, nothing else. You know, air gone, we are finished. And then Krishna completes the description of himself as the maintainer. In the 15th verse of this chapter, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarvairahameva vedyo vedanta kritvedavid eva cha aham. Krishna says, Sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishtaha. I am sitting in the heart of everyone. Mataha, from me, what happens? Smriti jnanam apohanam. Remembrance also comes from me. Knowledge also comes from me. Forgetfulness also comes from me. And then he says, Vedescha sarvair ahameva vedya. Through all the Vedas, Vedescha sarvair aham, I only, aham eva, vedya means knowable. The only thing that is knowable through the Vedas, or the only thing that you should try and know through the Vedas, is me. By all Vedas I am to be known. Vedanta Krit, I am the writer, Krit of Vedanta. Vedavit evacha aham. And I am the only one who is a knower of all Vedas. You see? So now he's taken completely everything on himself. You see? I give remembrance, I give knowledge, I give forgetfulness. So somebody wants to forget Krishna also, Krishna is only giving you that forgetfulness. You see? That is why Acharyas say, the atheist, for him to say that there is no God, that conception of there is no God also is given to him by the Lord only, because he desired for that. You see? Like the atheist will say, I don't believe in God. So simply you change that sentence, I believe there is no God, right? That is also one type of belief. You see? Nobody is free from this belief paradigm, mind you. Okay, and that whatever kind of belief that you are having based on your proclivity, based on the desire of your mind, Krishna says, okay, keep it. If that's what you want, if that is how you want, keep it. Want to forget me, doesn't matter. Why? Eventually you will know and you will come back. So, the Vedas are actually giving us direction towards Krishna. Veda Mata, Krishna Pita. Just like only the Mata, only the mother can tell the child who the father is. Nowadays you have DNA and other things. But by word, only a mother will be able to show the child, this is your father. So, Vedas, they are our mother. And the Vedas are pointing to Krishna and saying, this is your Parampita. Aham bija prathapita. So, that is what we have to understand. And the ultimate goal of all Vedic studies is to understand Krishna. Because Vedaischa sarvair ahameva vedyaha. Krishna himself says that through all Vedas I am only to be known. In other words, wordplay again, If you know Krishna, you know Vedas. Simple as that. That is why they say that the gopis of Vrindavan, they are on a level even higher than the biggest Vedanti. Why? Because they know Krishna. They know what Krishna wants. They know how to spend their life in a way that would make Krishna happy. So they are better than any Vedanti. See? So, how we develop that understanding of our relationship with Krishna? So 16, 17, 18, we spoke already about how these three verses will show us, So 16th verse says, there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible. So, the living entities, fallible and infallible, means susceptible to fall, not susceptible to fall. And if you are in the material world, you are susceptible. That is why we are called Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti. The Jivatma is also called Tatastha Shakti. There is the Antaranga Shakti of Krishna, which is where the entire spiritual platform is manifesting. The Bahiranga Shakti of Krishna, on that Shakti, the entire material manifestation is manifesting. Then there is a Tatastha Shakti, which is situated between this and this. Tata, the Sanskrit word means Tata, you would know. If you have been to villages in India where there are paddy fields, if you see, they will be demarcated by tatas. It is a very narrow walkway. Just for 1 foot in front, the other foot, 1 foot in front, the other foot. This is where you have to walk on the tata. So, Tatastha means you can fall either this side or this side. Susceptibility to fall is there. Right? So, Tatastha Shakti. So, this Tatastha Shakti is fallible, susceptible to fall. But the living entities were already there in the spiritual world. Tripadur Dvaudait Purushaha. In Purusha Suktam it says, the Tripad Vibhuti of Krishna, that is 3/4 of the entire Vibhuti is in the spiritual world. And there the entities were there, they are all perfect. They will not fall. But anybody who is here in the material world, they are susceptible to fall. And then Krishna says, besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So, now very clearly he says that above these, the fallible and the infallible entity, there is imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered into all these worlds. That is why Supreme Lord is called Vishnu. Vishantihi iti Vishnu. That means one who enters is called Vishnu. And the Supreme Lord is entering into all these worlds to sustain them and maintain them. So, He is above the fallible and the infallible living entities. And then goes on to complete, because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Now He is completed that. What is that? I am beyond the fallible and the infallible, and I am Divya, I am transcendental, Atindriya, beyond the Indriyas, and I am the greatest. He is Vibhu. The Lord is called Vibhu. That is why Vibhuti means the greatness. And one who possesses all that greatness is Vibhu. Vibhum, the Supreme Lord is addressed as in Vishnu Sahasranama. So, He says, I am celebrated in the world. That is, in the material world also, everybody calls me the Supreme Person. In the Vedas also, they speak of me as the Supreme Person. So, He is different from the living entities. This is made very clear. And then, what are the activities when somebody has assimilated the knowledge in these three verses? Especially when one has assimilated the knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Person. What would he do? Yomamevam asammudho janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Yomam evam asammudho janati purushottamam. Somebody who has understood me as Purushottama without any doubt. Then he knows. Sa sarvavid bhajati mam. Sarvavid, he knows everything. Correct? And what he does? Bhajati mam. He is engaged in bhajana. Sarva bhavena. You see? Totally. He is totally engaged in bhajana of Krishna. That is bhajati mam sarva bhavena. So, simply by understanding the true fruit of the Vedas, which is the knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Person, then one becomes sarvavit, means one who knows everything. And because he knows everything, he is performing Shuddha Bhakti Seva. And then Krishna concludes this chapter by saying, this is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. O Anagha, Arjuna, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise and his endeavors will know perfection. So, if we understand the Purushottama Yoga, the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, our endeavors will become perfect. So, knowing Krishna to be the Supreme Person, serving Krishna with full devotion, with love, and Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Anagha, means Agha means sin, Anagha means sinless, free of sins. That is, the indication here is that unless one becomes free from all sinful activities, free from all papa pratikaranas, that is reactions to sinful activities, you cannot understand Krishna. It is very, very difficult. So, he is calling Arjuna Anagha. O sinless one, now this is disclosed by me. To who? To you. Because you are free from sins. You see? So, our question that in spite of reading this, why am I not understanding it? I am also reading Purushottama Yoga so many years. I am not understanding means I have not become sinless yet. So, this is how the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled the Purushottama Yoga, gets concluded. Thank you very much for your attendance. Hare Krishna.